حضورنا الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أسعد الله صباحكم بكل خير في ثاني أيام منتدى المرأة العالمي في دبي. تشير الدراسات إلى أن متوسط أعمار النساء ارتفع بوتيرة كبيرة مقارنة بالرجال في الفترة الأخيرة. ولكي تعيشي حياة أفضل لابد من اتباع حياة صحية. والجلسة الأولى لليوم من هذا المنتدى صحي بحت. معانا شخصية شهيرة، مقدم برنامج أوز الشهير وأستاذ بجامعة كولومبيا، الدكتور أوز إن شاء الله بيمتعنا بالكثير من المعلومات حول الحياة الصحية الخاصة بالمرأة.
Dear guests, Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to day 2 of the Global Women's Forum, Dubai. Today on day 2 of this forum, we welcome you to embark on another journey, one which will see us create synergies, energize evolutions, and sustain goals. Today's first speaker is a renowned heart surgeon who's brought complementary medicine to the mainstream, as a television personality, as an author, and as a radio host. He joins us today to share his insights, which indicate that we will continue to live longer. Apparently, the life expectancy of women has risen faster than that of men. Joining us today to debate if living longer means living better, please join us in welcoming Dr. Oz.
رحبوا معنا بالدكتور أوز. Welcome, Dr.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'll say at the outset, this has been a remarkable several days with me, for me. I've been able to meet many of you and enjoyed very much the sessions yesterday. I want to focus today's event on you. It is the best way to make any society sustainable is to make sure the people within it feel valued. And I am going to talk about how 80 is the new 50, because it's becoming true. If you're healthy today, you have a pretty good chance of living to age even 100 and feeling like you're 60 or maybe 70. So you're not perfect, you're not 20, you won't look 20, but you will feel so healthy, you'll want to keep thriving. That means most of us can begin to achieve our biological age, which today we believe is about 120 at its maximum. Now you may think, again, I don't know if I want to live 120 years, but you will have that option. And I bring it up to you as an opportunity because if we handle it correctly, we'll feel so healthy when we get to that 120 that another possibility raises its head. That with technologies, which I'll touch on very briefly today, we're actually going to be able to increase that biological limit that we believe exists today for humans beyond 120. And we know that with that, there is this possibility that you'll be always a little bit behind the curve, which is a good thing because the curve of technology will advance before you get to that age. So you'll be able to control the way you feel, maybe even past the age of 120. But let's start with where you are today. A lot of us think, okay, well, how old am I? I'll take my birthday, I'll subtract it from today, and I'll calculate the number of years I've been on the planet. That's interestingly the wrong way to approach how old you are. What you really want to know is how old does my body think I am? And the way you calculate that is something called the real age test, which you can all take today after this session. It's a couple questions, and with those questions, we can predict even more effectively than your chronological age what your biological age is. And that is a very cool way of being able to figure out what are the key levers, the key important points that drive aging. As an example, I'm going to walk you through today the major agers, the things we know take the most number of years. But there's some things that we tell you not to do, we finger wag, that actually aren't as important. And when you appreciate that difference, some things really important, some things not, you can begin to choose. So meat. How important is meat? So I was eating dinner last night at that wonderful Cartier Awards dinner with Christine Lagarde, and Christina told me she has not eaten meat in 42 years. And it wasn't only a health issue, but I was attuned to it because my wife has been a vegetarian for the same number of years, exactly. And so for my wife, it was an issue of ethics. For many, it's an issue of health. They don't eat meat. But not eating meat, if it's high quality meat, doesn't give you a lot of extra longevity. It's a minor player. Vegetarians live longer, but not a lot longer. It's the bad quality meat, the hot dogs, the processed meats that lead to a reduction in longevity. So I'm hoping today that by treating you as adults and telling you what the real data is, you'll be able to make wise decisions about how to drive the healthiest life that you can possibly live. Now, why is that important for today? Because the chief family officer, the real way that I think you're going to find that women play an increasingly powerful role in the world in general, but especially in this region of the world, is by looking at health. Because women are attuned to health. It's subtle, but it's always there. Men spend most of their life trying to build these big temples to themselves. Like the story of Ozymandias, the poem, right? You remember this big statue that eventually erodes away into the dust of time. Men do that because they have health without any real compromise for many years of their life. And only when they reach into their 50s, maybe, do they begin to realize their knee hurts a little bit, or they can't run as fast, and they begin to slow down. Women face mortality from the moment they reach puberty. All of a sudden, things happen to their bodies that make them realize, my goodness, something could happen to me. And then, one step further, they have babies, which also puts them at risk, because they begin to focus on their health, but also the health of the child, the miracle they brought to the earth. And then they go through hormonal shifts, and not just menopause, but the monthly shifts. And all these remind women continually of the value of health, of the importance of it. And so by talking to the chief family officer, the women of the world, you get health onto the agenda. And we've looked at countries around the world. A good example maybe being India, where they had a dramatic change in fertility rates and child conception, which then led to a change in the economic status of many of the smaller communities as women begin to feel their power, the many ways they can contribute besides bringing new life to the planet. And I think health becomes a very important way where the conversation is changed by an alteration of what people expect from the women in their society. But let me start at the beginning, because today I'm going to talk about the good life. Now, what is the good life? This is I made this cover up. It's a fake cover of my magazine, but it's the topics we're going to talk about today. The good life is many things, right? It's not about fast cars and lots of money. The good life is about what really matters to you, what really, really drives your happiness in life. Yes, it's about growing as a person and about being healthy and having love in relationships, but it's really about food, fun, family, it's about beauty, it's about sleep. It's about doing things that allow you to feel like you're living your life at 100% of who you want to be. And that is probably the best way to begin having a conversation about health. Many of us think that we're healthy because we're not in the hospital. We're not taking a lot of medications. We get up in the morning, we feel okay. But the question you should ask yourself is what percentage of who I am I today? Am I living my life at 50th percentile? Am I living my life at 90th percentile? Or am I living my life at 30th percentile of who I could be? And if you begin to demand for yourself that you're living at 90th percentile of who you could be at your biological age, you become more insistent. And you begin, like a professional athlete taking care of your body, to begin to treasure the temple of the soul and begin to think differently about the role that it could play in your life. So I'm going to take you through a series of images, some cartoons, some videos. These are clips, some of them from my show. And all these experiences, I hope, will begin to color your insights. But one thing I ask is that when you're done today, you go tell people that you care about what you've learned today. It's the only thing I ask. But spread the message, spread the word about things that you've learned that will drive your ability to, whether it's to lose weight or look more beautiful or sleep better, so that people in your circle of influence can begin to understand this. Because as people of influence, you'll be able to send those ripples throughout society. I'm also going to ask that you ask me questions. So I'm going to save some time at the end. So if you have thoughts, issues, you can ask questions about the person next to you if you want, if it's personal. But make sure that you have some ideas that you've written down, and I'll take as many as I can. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing, I hope, this is my day job. I still am a heart surgeon. I work at Columbia University, New York Presbyterian Hospital. I ran the Heart Institute for many years, but I'm a heart surgeon. And you look at this image, and the left one is a mechanical heart pump. And these pumps now they piggyback pumps. They keep hearts that are failing alive. I spent my whole life putting in these devices and doing traditional open heart surgery, the kind that you know about and is done very well in Emirates. But I would sit in my office, and this is my office, and like many of your offices, you sit there and you're so busy that you don't have even 2 minutes to start thinking about the issues that are important in your life. And I want you to challenge yourself as you look at these images that come up about whether this is what your life really represents today. Because yes, you have to work hard, we all do, but you really want to work smart. And you have too much responsibility and it's too important what you're doing to not pay attention to that side of the equation. So, I don't know if my slides are, am I pointing at the wrong thing? Maybe not. Advance the slide, please, if you don't mind. This is an image of me growing old. And I'm not growing old so gracefully, am I? This is me going into my 80s, and I don't look 50. I don't look good at all. My skin is aged inappropriately. I put on belly fat. My posture wasn't very good. This is what my destiny could hold if I don't pay attention to some of the things I want to speak about today. However, this is not my destiny written in stone. This is one option. One other possibility, now it worked, is this. This is me gracefully aging. This is me doing what I should be doing in life. I look more like maybe Clark Gable here, right? Less belly fat, better posture. If you notice, I've taken better care of my skin. I have less of the bags. I just generally look like a healthier version of myself at age 80. So if 80 is the new 50, we want to be this version of 80. We want to be 80 in a way that makes us want to go to 90 or to 100. And since half the people who live to age 80 live to age 90, you're going to live that long anyway. So you might as well do it with grace and with a feeling of vitality so that you enjoy those years. You're not limping along to go to the end. So the thing that I would start off with is defining who you are. So I'll give you a little exercise. My partner is Oprah. We make the shows together, and I did her show before I started my show 7 years ago. I did it maybe 90 times. And the last day I was on her show, I was given a homework assignment. And I was asked to pick 3 people who I liked a lot and ask them to describe who I am, what they like about me in one word. I want you all to do this in your lives today. Text or call 3 people who like you. They have to like you. It doesn't count. And ask those 3 people to describe what it is about you in one word that they enjoy. And for me, the word all 3 of my friends picked was passion. Now, I might be other things, good and bad, but the one word everyone knew defined me was passion. I'm passionate as a heart surgeon. I'm passionate about the show that I make. I'm passionate about talking to you. I care a lot about the things I care about, and that makes up for the other things I don't do so well. Each of you have a similar characteristic. Find out who you are, and that was my homework assignment, and then be that person. Show up as that person every day. Make that your North Star, the place you're going to aim. And as I go through and talk about the overarching philosophy of change, that is going to be the first part of my presentation, because in order to become the person you want to become, you have to be involved in change. And I'm in the change business. And to truly transform yourself, you have to focus on the right things. And this ultimately becomes the major driver for many of us. The major limit to a lot of us being the change we want to see in ourselves is we believe in things that aren't true. As an example, the life-work balance. You've all heard this, right? You need to work the right amount. You have to have the right amount of life needs. And unfortunately, it's not true. Because think about this. In order to be successful in your work, you have to have ambition. Ambition is about being different from everybody else. You have to be unique and separate and special in order to have ambition and be better, or at least your own person. Now, at the same time, you want intimacy. We all crave intimacy, which is fitting in, being like everybody else. So you want to be different and the same, all together. It's impossible. So it's really like 2 sides of a slope going up, and at the very top, there's only a little point there. You can't stay on that point. It hurts. So you have to either be on one side or another side of this life-work balance, which is okay. Once you realize that, you don't get upset about it. And for women especially, because your life-work balance has many aspects to it, including the family that's dominant, it becomes a major frustration that you're unable to deep inside your soul appreciate that you're not supposed to ever be on the top of that curve. You're supposed to be either trying to feel intimacy or trying to feel ambition. And when you go back and forth, that's fine. There's one exception to this rule. One time it doesn't fly. And that is when you actually, this isn't working, I've been hitting it, so maybe you just advance the slide. But that happens when you're trying to both grow and contribute at the same time. Now, this is an interesting little problem, because when you give to somebody else, you actually grow as a person. Women viscerally understand that, because when you give, for example, give life, you grow. It's paradoxical. You normally don't give something to somebody and then get bigger yourself, you would think, right? I'm giving you part of what I own, therefore I have less of what I own. But it's the opposite. And philosophically, it ends up becoming an important distinction, because it drives where you put your focus. Because where your focus goes, so does your energy flow. All of that's going to pour in that same direction. It's the one exception to life-work balance, which is why events like this are so important. And why I've loved working with your organizers, because when their energy's all around contributing and giving, everybody feels enlightened by that. And by lightening our load, you therefore feel like you can do whatever you want to do in life. This is an image of a woman, the one in the middle. She is a fascinating woman. She actually lives in England. But she was coming to visit the United States, and she was walking on the sidewalk on 6th Avenue. Now, my office is in 30 Rockefeller Center, which is in the middle of Manhattan. And as she's walking down the road, a cab driver was fighting with a bicycle next to him. And he swerved to knock the bicycle over, missed the bicycle, hit her, and amputated her leg. And she's lying on the sidewalk in the middle of Manhattan, bleeding to death. The man on the right is a plumber. He took his belt, didn't know what to do, took his belt off, put it around her leg, and tightened it, and stopped the bleeding. But he he saved her life. And I ran down, and others came down, and we got her in an ambulance, but he saved her life by putting his belt. As a plumber, he knew about flow of fluids, so he stopped the fluid from flowing. And he was so shy, so embarrassed to see her or to talk to anybody, he disappeared. He actually secretly went to the hospital, but didn't have the strength to go meet her. So I invited them both on the show, and he came. And it was one of the most emotional days for me, because I realized that he had grown so much from contributing to her, and she had insisted on seeing him in order to pay him back. These are the kinds of moments that allow us to grow and contribute together that drive change. Now, while all that's happening, we have to deal with the imperfections in our life. This is what my face looks like. I took my right face, I divided it in half, took my left face and divided it in half, and then covered the screen. So you think, my goodness, he's so asymmetrical. My right and my left look very different. I'm just like you. And our imperfections are actually very interesting to the people around us, as well as us. I used to take my kids when they were younger, I have 4 children, to the Natural History Museum in New York. It's where they shot Night at the Museum. And there's a big jewelry, precious stone exhibit. And my daughters would sit there. They thought they were shopping. They thought they were going to take these stones home. So the Hope Diamond, all these famous stones, they're writing them down. There's a big jade stone in the middle. Huge jade stone. They never picked it. None of them ever wanted it. And I couldn't understand it for a while. And then I asked one of them, why don't you take the jade? And she said, Daddy, it's boring. A perfect jade stone with no inlaid gold, no cracks, no uniqueness is boring. It's just green round, who cares? It looks plastic. What makes jade beautiful are the flaws, just like us. What makes us beautiful to people in our lives are the fact that we're asymmetrical, that we've got flaws that need to be fixed. What makes this event interesting, ultimately, is you're going to go home and try to change the lives of the people who are dear to you with the information you're going to learn. And if you think that imperfection is a hindrance, you won't be able to do that. Instead, you'll see yourself like this, Jabba the Hutt, right, from Star Wars, and you don't like that look. And now it paralyzes you. So that's sort of my preamble to get us started. What really holds us back? Well, there are 4 things that hold us back. We don't have enough time, we think, although it's not really about time management. It's about energy management. If you have the amount of energy that you need, and if you get energy from what you're doing, you'll do more of it. So time management. Number two, you have to have enough money, but you don't need a lot of money. It turns out that the value of money in happiness and change is very, very small. Most of the things that you need to do to change don't cost very much. Most of them are inside of you, they're free. And yet, that change process, when you think you don't have enough money because you're looking in the wrong places, can paralyze you. You need to have knowledge. That's why we're here today. But the big reason you don't change is fear of change. And why do you fear it? We all do. Because we fear that if we try to change and it's new and different and we don't succeed because we haven't done it before, that's failure. And failure means people won't love you anymore. And when you think that's the case, that people aren't going to love you anymore, well then that's spiritual death. That's a big, big problem. And spiritual death takes you to a place, a dark place you don't want to be. So I'm going to show you a clip of someone you know who's been very flawed. Someone that I've been trying to help because of the fact that he has this fear of change.
I think it's good, all knowledge is good, right?
Knowledge is good, but again, since we're being honest, I would at least, in some part of my soul, if I were you, be thinking, these kids they're going to want to emulate me. I'm dad. They want to be like me.
Yeah.
You don't have that fear?
I do, of course, yeah. Yeah, and heightened now that you brought it up. Seriously. No, there's a lot to think about after. This is not just entertainment right now. There's some cathartic things happening here. This is deep. I haven't done an interview like this maybe ever.
So Charlie Sheen's on my show today in the United States, and the show's in over 100 countries, so many of them will air it a couple days from now, but you'll all see the show eventually. And Charlie was diagnosed with HIV. And the day he made the announcement, we spoke, and he agreed to come chase the cure, chase a solution to his problem. But Charlie Sheen's biggest problem isn't his HIV. His biggest problem is why he did the things that led to his getting infected and many other mistakes that he's made. And when you begin to realize that it's not the diagnosis of physical ill issues, but the mental problems that led to it that drive so many of the mistakes we make, it changes the equation, much more difficult to fix. And the mania that I think he has, he calls them demons, that get into his head and force him to do things he shouldn't do, are something we see in all of our lives. We may not have it quite as severely, but we have elements of that, and certainly people who we need to help and desperately want our support feel that acutely. So how do we make those differences happen? Well, here's how you actually change. And these are lessons that I was really taught by Oprah, because this is the foundation of how I think she believes you get people to transform. But they are also, in practical medicine, where we practice our care, this ends up becoming how we get people to do what we think they should do. Number one, and think about this in your own personal life, people do not change based on what they know. They change based on how they feel. This is true for political elections, it's true for doctors helping patients, it's true for moms helping their children, it's true for people changing their families. It's across the world the same. I can wag my finger about how bad cigarettes are for you, but you already know if you're a smoker, cigarettes are bad for you. So by telling your brain something you already know that you haven't been able to change, you get depressed. So to relax, you go out and you smoke, which is what happens with addictive behaviors and many other mistakes like overeating. It has the opposite of the desired effect to tell people what they're doing wrong. In fact, that's why we call it nagging, right? You don't want to do it, it doesn't work. But if you can get them to feel differently about what they're doing to their bodies, and I'm going to give you some examples in a few minutes, now they'll begin to change. Number two rule, you have to make it easy to do the right thing. An example, when you open your refrigerator door, the first food you see will be the food you eat. When you open your pantry, whatever's there, the children are going to eat. So if you stack the odds in your favor, you won't have those problems. So in our refrigerator, when you open it, I don't put leftovers and soft drinks at the top. If you're going to have them at all, we don't have any soft drinks in our house, period. But these leftovers, we put at the very bottom. We put the fruit on the top. Put the healthier things on top. It's the first thing everyone sees. It's what your mind and your energy begin to go to. Similarly, in the pantry, we always stack stuff foods we know are better for us. If you look past all that bad, good stuff, you can find the bad stuff, but it's not easy to get to. So simple architecture like that in your kitchens make a huge difference. Same things in the workplace. Keeping the healthy foods easy for people to see, as opposed to a candy jar on the desk, allows people naturally to do the right thing because it's the easy thing to do. When you create societies that have sidewalks, people use them. If we don't provide an ability for people to naturally do activities, they're not going to be able to. So these are simple things that, from urban planning to the way we plan out our homes and our workplaces, dramatically affect even the color of the rooms. Red rooms, you eat different amounts of food than blue rooms. Bright light, you eat less food than low light. Restaurants know this and accordingly use these visual cues to make it easy to do the right thing or easy to do the wrong thing. You also want to adore your solutions. You have to love them. Don't eat healthy food. Eat food you love that happens to be healthy. And if you do that, you'll be living the good life. Now, while you're doing that, in the back of your mind, you want to remember a few things. The number one driver of feeling differently about things is connection. It's what we actually crave deep down inside of us, is looking in each other's eyes and focusing on what it is that brings us together. It's that intimacy, that connection, that oneness that all humans crave. And we forget the power of that to get people to change. You also have to have gratitude. There's a gracefulness of understanding what you do have already, which is almost always enough if you had nothing more. But it brings an underlying level of happiness to you when you have the gratitude. On top of that, we want to start building this powerful motivation to change. And this, if you can take one picture today, is this slide. When we talk about 80 being the new 50, we have to talk about the lever arms. What are the things that change? These are the 5 life adjustments that drive most of how we will live our lives. 70% at least, 70% of how old and how well we will live are driven by these 5 factors. Now think about that. 5 things driving so much of how we age. Yet, each of these factors themselves requires you to do several things. As an example, blood pressure. The blood pressure we worry about as doctors is 140/90 or 14/9. That's the number we worry about. But the optimal blood pressure, the best blood pressure, is about 115/75. In fact, lower is better as long as you're not lightheaded. You want a low blood pressure because it's less work for your heart. Before I came here, I went to Oman. And there's a spa resort there. And I was looking at them gathering data. And they were gathering lots of data, but the most important data they had on all their guests was the blood pressure. And you might think, why do they care so much about it? Because blood pressure, they know, is like a hose. It's squirting on this very delicate lining of an artery. And when you scrape that artery, the very thin lining on it is pushed away. And the body has to heal it. Now, how does the body heal a hole? Right? If I were to punch a hole in the floor here, you'd take plaster and put it on, fix the hole. But the body doesn't have plaster. Instead, it has something called cholesterol. Cholesterol is the body's plaster. If you have high quality HDL cholesterol, you make a beautiful repair. You can't even tell that it was broken. But if you use lousy LDL cholesterol, you have this cheap cholesterol that falls out of the holes and it begins to clog up the arteries. Again, if you don't have a hole, you don't care about cholesterol. That's why blood pressure is so important. If you don't have the blood pressure squirting away the lining, you don't have to fix anything. I didn't put it on here, but I'm going to talk about it in a few minutes. The other driver of those holes is diabetes. And the Emirates has the highest incidence of diabetes in the world. And there are many reasons we can talk about if you have questions later, but the diabetes is like broken pieces of glass shard, scraping the floor, scraping it. And then by ripping it up, you have to again put plaster, cholesterol, to repair it, which is the other reason that diabetes together with blood pressure is a 1-2 punch that dramatically ages us. And diabetes doesn't just change our arteries, it turns our skin yellow. And that yellowing and the ultimate ulcers that you get with diabetes are one of the reasons that it's also a major ager. But even diabetes is not as important as blood pressure. Number 2 is exercise, activity. You need about 30 minutes a day, but you don't have to run. It's any activity. Activity that's enough that you have to get a little breathy. Like that. You can walk fast, you can walk up the stairs, you don't have to do it all at once, you can break it up. However you want to do it is fine. But 30 minutes of some activity every day in these beautiful buildings in Dubai, you can wear sneakers and walk up a couple flights during your day. It doesn't matter. But 30 minutes a day of something that's a bit more than just slowly walking around like a stroll. You also want a diet that you love, as I mentioned. Forget about eating healthy food. Do not eat healthy food. Eat food you love that happens to be healthy. That's how you'll eat it. Fourth, stress management, and in particular, I say sleep, because if you're not managing stress correctly, you will not sleep. The major epidemic we have in sleep is driven by the fact that we have ruminations, thoughts in our minds all the time, because we have stresses we're not addressing while we're awake. Now, there are other techniques that are important for sleep I'll cover, but that becomes a major partnership that has to happen. And finally, dealing with addictions. And I'm not just talking about drugs and alcohol, but I'm also dealing with addictions to food, addictions to work, many other factors that take us away from the real focus, the real intimacy we should be seeking in life, that don't allow us to have the graceful ability to age to 80 the way that we've promised each other we can. So look at this image of an American television personality. Her name is Rosie O'Donnell. She had a heart attack, and she came on the show. And to explain it, we looked at her heart. That artery in the front bringing life-sustaining blood is called the widowmaker. It's critical. Inside it, there's blood vessels flowing through. And when you have plaque, see the plaque begin to develop? Over the course of 20, 30 years, that plaque will rupture if it's big enough. See it crack? Once it cracks, your body wants to put a scab to heal the cut. And that scab blocks off the artery, and boom! When it blocks off the artery, it's like punching the heart. You get this big bruise. What you're watching here, my friends, is a heart attack. It's the number one reason we die. And as the heart finally stops from the heart attack, you realize that that major blood vessel, bringing all that energy to the heart, was damaged because of that plaque. Now we know that plaque starts when we're very young. We know that because they did autopsies on American soldiers who were killed and saw even at age 20, a lot of these young men had plaques. But they don't die from the plaque. What kills us, men and women, and more women die of heart disease than men because women live longer. And so the heart disease catches up to them more often. And which is, again, most women don't appreciate. But once we understand that it's not the plaque, but the rupture, the crack, and then the blood clot on top of it that kills us, that gives us a lot of power. That means what you have for lunch today can change the chance of you having a heart attack tomorrow or the next day. Because if you're eating the right foods, within hours you begin to change the chemistry in your blood. And within weeks, you have dramatic changes in things like cholesterol levels. So we have that control. It's not our genes. Yes, the genes are important, they play a role. But they're only the cards you were given. The way you play those cards, that's your lifestyle. And that drives 2/3 of how you will live and die. And that's why things like this heart attack become variables that we control.
We tested all kinds of people.
Are you ready? I guess.
From all different places.
Pennsylvania, California, North Carolina.
And all walks of life.
Come on up.
I'm Bob Green.
Jared.
You're having your tests done today,
Yes.
so...
I was supposed to have it done for a while because I drink a lot of water. I'm always thirsty. You can never cure the thirst.
37-year-old Jared had never been tested for diabetes before.
This is Jared.
Hey, Jared, how are you?
Good.
You know, when they call the doctor over, that's not good news. While that runs, I'm going to tell you that number's supposed to be under 6. The amount of sugar that's traveling around in your blood cells needs to be under that number. That's what it should be for all of us. Your number is 12.8.
Wow.
12.8 worries me a lot. That's more than twice what's tolerable.
Yeah. That's what I do about it.
What do I do about it? Jared, again, he's 37. He's going to the bathroom all the time, he's urinating, he's thirsty all the time, he feels tired. What's the diagnosis? Diabetes. We already talked about how it's such a highly prevalent problem in the Middle East, but it's problem all over the world now, mainly driven by our weight. Jared's blood sugar, when we checked it in the hospital, which I took him to after the show, was 500. And he didn't have any knowledge they had the problem. Like almost half of diabetic patients, just by dealing with his lifestyle, we took his blood sugar back almost to normal. Think about that. to have the ability to control your blood sugar, usually with no medications, is ours to have. And the Jareds of the world show us that. However, the most important thing in that little segment was when Jared said, what do I do about it? He asked the important question. Bob Greene, who was next to me, Oprah's trainer, was one of the first to start to say loudly that activities, physical activity, together with the diet could really deal with the diabetes. And it has become validated and reinforced now over and over again. And we now, across the globe, appreciate that we can control that. And interestingly, when you don't deal with diabetes, you bankrupt the healthcare system. Probably half of the US healthcare system is driven by obesity. Just that one problem. It will become the biggest cost drain in the healthcare systems all over the world. So it's not just a nice thing to do to let you live to age 80. It becomes an economic imperative if you want your healthcare system to be affordable to everybody. Otherwise, you're taking people into the hospital, every once in a while to deal with crises, and you're giving people medications that are very expensive. And many of those medications actually don't cure the problem. They just slow it down. So if I give you insulin for your diabetes, it doesn't cure your diabetes. It just deals with the headache of it and ultimately introduces other potential issues. If I give you blood pressure medications because you're overweight and your blood pressure is too high, what happens? Well, you slow your metabolism down, you gain more weight. So the medications paint the cracks over in the foundation of our health, but they don't really cure the underlying problem, which only we can do in our homes. Because the place we win the battle for health, which is why it's so important to women, is in our kitchens, in our bedrooms, in our living rooms. That's where you win the battle for health. You don't win it in the hospitals. Hospitals are where we make the big saves, but the battle is fought in our homes. Now, let me explain, in my perspective, how we begin to shift it from an intellectual discussion to one that's deep in our hearts. This is a human lung. And notice how beautiful and elegant. It looks like cotton candy. It's like a sponge. It's pristine. It's brownish. It allows the blood to come and go. Now, when you smoke, it looks like this. See the dark tar, the blackness? See the area at the top where there are little holes? It looks moth-eaten, right? That's emphysema. Now, people who smoke don't realize they're doing this to their lungs. When they do, they're more likely to stop. So getting people to feel differently, just by seeing it differently, is a very powerful tool. And many of the advertising campaigns that we're designing around these different lifestyles, and which now governments are getting behind, work on this principle. They're not trying to teach the numbers. They're trying to show you what life would be like if you didn't do what you were doing. And cigarettes become the prototypical example, because if it works for cigarettes, it'll work for many other addictions.
What is your worst habit?
I'm so embarrassed and ashamed. Potatoes and cigarettes.
You smoke?
I just kind of hold them. They actually do the smoking.
Well, how long have you been holding them for?
50 years.
50 years? And how many do you hold a day?
As many as I can. Probably hold a pack and a half. Don't look at me that way.
This woman, her name is Paula Deen. She's a very famous American chef. And when she was a young woman, she was 20, she had 2 children, was divorced from her husband, and made a huge impact on the way Americans cook food. They didn't cook it, she didn't cook it healthily, she just influenced them to cook food. And her obvious shame, which is the best word, I think, about her inability to stop smoking, despite being so successful, building a huge business around the Paula Deen brand, is a perfect example of how people who smoke feel. How can it be that I'm so good at so many things, and yet I'm still smoking? How can I be so effective, and I'm still overweight? How can I do so many things right, but I can't even sleep at night? And you begin to hit yourself, and begin to complain that you're not worthy. And that is one of the major drivers, is people lose the belief that they can do it. And it actually is all doable and all within your grasp if you know again, what those lever points are. So how do I drive this home? I can do it in a couple ways, but I'm going to focus on probably the single biggest problem we have, which is weight. And whether you want to live to age 80 or just look beautiful at age 50, you still want to keep your weight in the right spot. Now, there's a couple mistakes we make about weight. First of all, it doesn't really matter. What matters is waist size. And the reason for that is because your waist size predicts the health problems you might have. Listen, I don't mind if you want to be skinny, but you have to be healthy. That's the reason to lose weight. And the formula is your height divided in half. Your height divided in half. So I'm 182 centimeters. Divide that in half, that's 91. If my waist size, my belt size, is smaller than 91, then I'm pretty good. Now, I might want to be skinnier than that. That's okay. But you have to be no more than 1/2 your height. And you have to actually measure it. Get a measuring tape and put it over your hips and on your belly button. This is especially important for you, to women to do to their men. And here's why. Men, after the age of 40, and please, for the men in the audience, correct me if I'm wrong. After the age of 40, men never buy new belt sizes. They buy the same belt, they put it down like this, right? And they have a very thin belt size, right? But they have all the fat here. So you have to actually get them to sit with the measuring tape and find out what their number is. And then use that as your gauge. The other thing I like is that without having the scale there, which goes up and down depending on if you're traveling or you had too much salt or ate one bad meal, you have waist size which doesn't change as quickly. So it slowly moves in the right or wrong direction. So you don't get panicked every day from what the scale is telling you. You know, there are patients who won't even go see their doctors because they're worried about getting weighed. They don't want to go into a big office and have the nurse put them up on this 90 kilos, right? And then they're embarrassed and everyone sees their weight and they have to sort of go away and hide. Instead, now we do it all privately. I won't even have my patients weighed. They know what their weight is. They've been doing it at home and they're ashamed about it half the time because half of the people are overweight. So instead, just get past that. Be done with that. Use a metric that doesn't involve all that. Now here's why it's important. This yellow material is the omentum. Get rid of it for a second. You see the big liver, the brown, and the gallbladder is the green round thing? Now the food, the breakfast you had, is moving from your stomach into your small intestine. As it moves into your small intestine, it mixes with the green bile. And that bile washes it. And as it breaks it down to small little particles, those particles get absorbed through the wall of the intestines. They go up to that major vein, the portal vein, into the liver. If you ate good food, your liver loves it. It's happy, it makes it into all the proteins that you need. If you eat the wrong food, your liver turns to foie gras. It turns to fat. And see it turn yellowish? The other thing that happens when you eat the wrong food is that omentum. It sounds like momentum. This yellow thing, it starts to stretch ponderously large. Big, huge omentum builds up to make that belly fat that I spoke about earlier. That yellow pad poisons the liver. That's why you get lousy cholesterol. It puts pressure on your kidneys. Your kidneys regulate your blood pressure. So when your kidneys feel squeezed, they have to elevate your blood pressure to get blood to them. And it blocks the ability of insulin to work, so you get diabetes. Think about that. The same problem, the same belly fat, the omentum, not the fat under your arms or here, or back. It's not the cellulite. It's the fat in your belly. It leads to high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and high blood sugar. The same problem, which is why we ultimately control the 3 major reasons that we have to go to the hospital in the modern world. So what do? You go on a diet. Well, conventional diets, they don't work so well, do you? Because they depend on willpower. And your biology will always beat your willpower. The biology of blubber is very complex. There are at least a dozen systems that tell us to eat. At least a dozen. How many of you, put your hands up, can hold your breath indefinitely underwater? Never have to breathe. There's one man in the back there. Right. Yeah. You can't do it, right? It's impossible. You wouldn't even try. That's why, in a very similar way, it's impossible to diet by forcing your biology. It's like holding your breath underwater. It can't be done. One of the reasons that Ramadan and the fasting was important and is important is because it teaches you the self-restraint, that at least for that daylight, you're not going to eat, and you're going to push back against your natural desire. But you eventually have to eat. The beauty of a spiritual practice like Ramadan is that you detoxify, you purify your body, but you can't mess it up when you break the fast. And so the ability to translate this wisdom and be able to use tools, like I'm going to talk about, to drive the things we do is powerful. Because when you walk into a grocery store, into a bakkal, into a market, you're actually walking into a pharmacy. The foods have such powerful effects on our bodies, if we understand how to use them, that it takes us to the next step without anything else, just by picking the better foods. Which is, again, why I keep focusing. It's not super expensive. You have to have access to the reasonable foods, but people can do this in their own families, in their own workplaces. So, let's walk through this. On the show, we create all these programs, these rapid weight loss programs that allow people to feel comfortable, but they're all based on a few simple principles. The number one, most important principle is sugar. Take a look.
So you're a sugar addict. Isn't everyone? It's not like you're eating that much sugar, right? Wrong. Let's break it down. The average American consumes 142 pounds of sugar a year. That's right, pounds. That's 1,463 bottles of soda. Not a soda fanatic? Well, try 5,855 cookies. That's 16 cookies a day. Now, who needs 16 cookies a day? Or for that matter, 1,894 cups of chocolate ice cream. Think of it this way. You're eating the equivalent of Bruno Mars. Bruno Mars made of sugar. You know that can't be good for you. So how do you stop craving so much sugar? I've got a plan. And oh yeah, it takes just 14 days. So let's get started.
So let's start about this plan. It's 14 days, right? Won't take a lot of effort. You basically get rid of the white foods. No white rice, no white pasta, no white sugar, white bread. All the white foods go away. It's harder than it seems, but it's very doable. And once you get rid of sugar, your whole world opens up. Now, why is it so hard to get rid of sugar? The white stuff. Because it hits your brain like cocaine. Literally. The same part of the brain that's turned on when you do drugs is turned on when you eat sugar. That's why it brings us comfort. That's why it's soothing to us. That's why we want more of it. That's why having a little sugar makes you want to have more sugar. And most of the time you think you're hungry, you're actually in withdrawal. Not hunger, it's withdrawal. Your craving for that sugar is not being satisfied, so you want more. So changing the way you live your day, starting with the different foods in the morning, becomes an important part of it. As an example, spicy foods, which are an important part of the cuisine here, work fine. Spicy foods work because they increase your metabolism, but they also reduce your appetite at the next meal. Making sure you have enough protein in the morning is also important. I usually tell people to get a little protein powder into a shake or have eggs or something that has rich protein sources first thing in the morning. Because if you have protein, your body can't metabolize it too quickly. It slows down the ability of the body to digest the protein, because the protein's hard to digest, and then you don't feel hungry for a long time. And there are all these paradoxical findings. For example, people think they can't have whole fat milk. Which is more fattening, whole fat or skim milk? You don't know now. People thinking that. And here's why you don't know. We've been telling you that fat milk, whole fat milk, has fat. Don't eat fat, you'll get fat. It makes sense. It's wrong. Every study ever done shows when you eat or drink skim dairy, you gain weight. You gain weight. Now why? Because if you take the fat out of milk, what's left? Sugar. Sugar. And so you don't want to drink sugar water all day long. That's what skim milk is. It doesn't taste very good, and it's not very filling. And you don't feel satiated, so you go eat more food. So it's the opposite effect. And how about another example? Should I eat eggs or not? Yeah. Yes. Now why? Eggs have cholesterol, right? So if your cholesterol is not good, you shouldn't eat eggs. Not right. Because the eggs are taken into your body. Remember that liver animation I showed? The liver digests the eggs and the cholesterol, breaks them down, and makes what it wants. Your body's cholesterol, the cholesterol in your blood, is not the cholesterol from the egg. It's the cholesterol your body made. And so if you're eating eggs and eating less food because of it, your belly fat goes away. Without the belly fat, your liver won't make cholesterol. So you actually will get less cholesterol by eating eggs, unless you're eating 10 a day. I mean, reasonable amount. And so these become natural mistakes that we make by interpreting things incorrectly. Now, when it comes to food, the best food for weight loss is probably nuts, which is great because in Dubai you have lots of nuts. But many great stores. I get all my nuts from here, by the way. My friends always bring them home back to the States, and I get them from all over the Middle East. And in Turkey, which I'm Turkish, we have wonderful nut sources. So I get the funduks, which are the hazelnuts from the Black Sea coast, and we have pistachios and the almonds, and there's all these different sources of nuts in this part of the world. People for a long time didn't eat nuts because nuts are fattening, because nuts have fat in them. But what the brain's looking for is nutrients, not fats, nutrients. And so if nuts, which are going to become trees, have lots of nutrients, they fill us up. We don't want to eat more food. And nuts, because you can put them in your pocket. I never travel without nuts in my pocket. I always have nuts. And the nuts are easy to carry around. I keep them in my office desk as well. And when I get hungry, I just put nuts in my mouth instead of getting snacks that are sugary. So I'm replacing junk sugar with healthy nuts, and that's a much better trade-off and will work for you. In all the studies that have been done, people who eat nuts lose weight. People who don't eat nuts gain weight. Because instead of nuts, they've got to put something else in their mouth. How about coffee? It works. It does. Problem with coffee is the cream and the sugar. But coffee, by increasing your metabolism a little bit, and stimulating you, it also distracts you from other foods. It works. I happen to like green tea more, because green tea, for me, gives me all the nutrients that I need, the catechol, the chemicals that you want, but it doesn't give you too much caffeine, because it hasn't been oxidized yet. It's young tea. Oolong tea is also okay. The younger teas don't have the caffeine, but they have the chemicals that give you energy. And so you get a good trade-off between the two. And both are better than this. Sugar water. Because sugar water is taken in such high quantities, your body doesn't realize what's happening. And artificial sweetened colas don't work. Because artificially sweetened foods, the aspartame, your brain says, wait a minute, you gave me sweet on my tongue, but you didn't give me the sugar. I didn't actually get the energy, so go and get more. And it reminds you to eat sugar, because artificial sweeteners are 200 to 300 times sweeter than sugar. So they remind your taste buds to go find more sugary foods, which is why people who drink colas tend to develop more of that belly fat that I spoke that comes from eating too much sugar. Now, when I was in Oman, I took a picture of this. We were at Ziggy Bay, and you see the different mezes and the different foods. This is a classic cuisine. You will not get heavy eating those foods. That's what they had for breakfast. I wish this is what most people were eating, instead of a pastry or something. But you can eat a lot of this stuff, and you will not put weight on. It's what your ancestors would have eaten anyway. It's what your biology tells you to eat, and yet we move away from it as we process the foods. Now, at the same time, I don't want to forget exercise. Now, let me be very clear about this. You will not lose weight exercising, but you will keep your weight down with exercise. So the reason to exercise is not to lose weight, but it's critical to longevity, and here's why. Most of us are not going to fail in life because we made simple little mistakes here and there. We're going to fail because we became frail. If I got rid of all the cancer, you know what our life expectancy would change? 3 years. We don't die from cancer. We don't die from heart disease. We die from frailty. We're not strong enough to deal with the treatment for our cancer or for our heart problem, or to get sick and get better again. And so in order to avoid the frailty that afflicts us when we're 80, we have to start doing weight work. Now, we don't have to lift heavy weights, but things like yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, basic exercises that allow you to, over time, begin to build some core strength as you focus in on what really matters. The activity levels that I'm talking about are not substantial. I'm talking maybe 10 minutes a day of something that pushes your muscles a little bit. I do this first thing in the morning, every morning. 7 minutes long. It's on, if you go to droz.com, which is a pretty big website that Oprah and I started, it tells you all these tools that are all free. And by the way, everything I'm saying is there as well, so if you forget it or want to see it again, just go there and you'll be able to check on all these things with the references oftentimes. But the ability to use your body a little bit is critical because it will allow you to truly go to 80 and beyond if you don't have the frailties associated. Look in the wild. What happens in the wild when you're hunting, right? Look at a cheetah. It's chasing its prey. It's running as fast as it can. There's not an ounce of fat on this animal. Look how quick it is as it gets closer and closer. Can you do this? Yeah. You can go full speed too. But you have to actually push yourself. You have to push yourself. Now, you don't need to do it for long periods of time, but by going full speed when you are going, you will train your body that you need to be there. Together with the rest of the things you're doing, it will allow you to truly go to age 50 and feel 50, to 80 and feel 50. But there's one other, there's subtleties to the way we think about our body, and most of us think, well, I'm getting older. I mean, how much can I really do? I'll share something with you that will blow your mind. The average fitness level of a 65-year-old is the same as a 17-year-old, in theory. And we know that from looking at marathon times. We look at marathon runners. The ability of a marathon runner to finish is the same at 17 and 65. They have the same times when they finish. No difference. Now, our physical fitness goes up until we're 27. Our strength, our ability to jump higher and push something. But our endurance stays the same from 17 to 65 because our ancestors would hunt. It was called persistence hunting. We'd run after the animal would run away. We'd run some more, animal would run away. We'd run some more. After 2 hours, we would catch the animal. They'd be so tired, they'd have to stop, and we'd stab them, eat them. You had to be part of the hunting system. So humans had to be able to endure activity at least to age 65. Now, I would argue that with the ability to put stem cells in an achy joint, to deal with issues like the cancers and heart disease very effectively now, the genetic issues that sometimes will hurt us, we have the ability to go way beyond 65 with our endurance, which is again why 80 becomes a new 50, because you now can taste what victory feels like. The only things holding you back are, for example, once in a while going full speed with your activity. I do this in the studio. I do the squat sitting. This is the classic Homo sapien position. You should go home tonight and see if you can do this. Because this needs to be what everybody can do. Because it stretches out every single joint that's critical in the core part of the body and forces you to work a little bit on that core strength. But as you go down and relax yourself, you'll begin to work on balance and posture and the rest. Now, yes, you could go to the bathroom too, but historically, this is a position we all had to be in. People still in the villages in Turkey, and I'm sure here as well, sit in groups like this. And they allow their knees and lower back and their hips to open up. And again, we call it Homo sapien position number 1 because it was the core position we all had to have. And simple things like this we forget. Now, I've written a lot of books. They're all called the U books. And the finger is pointing at you not to accuse you, but it's saying, hey, guys, we can do this. We called it the U books because it's about you. It's about you doing the things you need to be able to do in your own life. The one about staying young, notice the subtitle in red, The Owner's Manual to Extending Your Warranty. That's what I've been telling you today. And I'll finish with one last big theme, and then we'll take your questions. It's sleep. The one thing I haven't touched on yet, but perhaps the best barometer, because it takes me back to this issue of stress. Now, sleep's important because it's the number 1 way we generate growth hormone as we get older. And without growth hormone, you don't have your vitality. You won't look good. You won't feel your best. You won't appreciate that you're at 90th percentile of who you could be. So you have to be able to sleep. Why can't we sleep? Because of stress. There are other factors, but that's a major driver. And I raised stress, and I'll come back to it again, because stress is also the reason we put on belly fat. What's chronic stress? Chronic stress you might think is your job or the kids or some headache in the economy. Chronic stress to the body, to the biology of the body, is all about a famine. That's what would keep us stressed. 100 or 1,000 years ago, we would feel chronic stress when there wasn't enough food. So your hormones would change to get you to eat more food and more of things you don't even like. So whenever I see someone with a big belly, I know they have stress in their life. Likewise, the major driver of sleep issues becomes stress. But there are things in both you can do to help even if you don't manage the stress. For example, with sleep, there's something called sleep hygiene. Changing the room so it's easier to sleep. As an example, lights. Lights are actually very toxic to us because they turn off the brain's ability to make melatonin. This is a picture from China, where there's a ton of light now. And they've noticed significant changes in sleep rates for that reason. In America now, we're telling people to put covers on their iPads and their screens, their computer screens, that block the UV light, because that UV light turns off the brain. When you think about your ancestors, when they go into the villages, they see the sun go down over the horizon, the red rays tell your brain it's nighttime, make melatonin. And so you'd make more of these chemicals that would allow us to naturally know it's time to go to sleep. With bright light, it doesn't happen. That's why at least 20 minutes before you go to bed, turn the lights down or off, or use lights. The LED lights are made now that don't secrete the UV light. They're very inexpensive. Put them in the key lights in your bedroom, so at least for a few minutes your brain is able to allow itself to make melatonin. You know, they do this for the astronauts who go to space. Otherwise, they'd never sleep. They change the lights. They can program them. They make them no longer release the ultraviolets, the blue spectrum. They make more of the red spectrum. And you can actually even put red lights in your home if you want as well. Melatonin is a solution if you don't want to deal with it any other way. When you travel, it's a nice way of doing it because it gives you the natural source, but you can't eat melatonin right before bedtime. You have to give it 2 hours to get into your brain. So by either taking a melatonin supplement, a very small pill, or tart cherry juice, which vişne is the Turkish word. My father grew up in a farm in Turkey, and this is what their family grew. So these tart cherries have lots of melatonin in them. They're a natural solution. But again, you must have it at dinner time. Give it a couple hours to get into your brain. You have to have loose pajamas or no pajamas, but you must be very open at nighttime. Restrictive clothing will wake you up in the middle of the night, and you have to get rid of ambient noise. It's a big issue. So either a sound machine or live in a quiet area, but find some way of taking the noise levels because it's subconscious. There's actually data that women, women who live near highways or in busy cities have a higher death rate from heart attacks because the noise it subconsciously stimulates the brain. So it's imperative to control your environment, and most importantly, perhaps the temperature in the room. You want the temperature as cold as possible. You want to see your breath. And if you and your spouse are fighting over the right temperature, whoever wants it colder wins. So in our home, my wife wants it freezing. I want it warmer, but she gets to win. Because she would win anyway, but she wants to win because we know that people sleep better. They hibernate in the cold. And if you're having trouble getting your body temperature down, wear socks. Because if your feet are warm, your core temperature will go colder. And in a cold temperature, that's a room that's quiet, with the right kind of lighting, and with loose pajamas, not restrained, people sleep 50% of the time better than not. Simple little steps that will allow you to generate growth hormone. But let me not forget about stress. A lot of people think stress is about anger. It's not. Anger is not the problem. You know, if you're driving on the road and someone cuts you off, getting mad at them is normal. And what's the worst thing to say to someone who's angry? Calm down, right? It's the worst, because anger calls for action. That's why you're angry. But that doesn't matter. All of our data shows that anger is tolerated very well. It's okay with the body. The problem is, if you're driving down, they cut you off, and you wish they died, right? That's hostility. Hostility is a problem because now you're separated from everybody else. Now you're isolated. You're no longer a raindrop falling into the ocean of humanity. That's what you want to feel, that intimacy I spoke of earlier. So hostility, that's a problem. That drives a lot of health issues, including more stress. So you could do this, right? You know, lots of arid lands to put your head in the ground on, but it doesn't work so well. So there's tools that we know work. One of them, the most important, and it's the part of all religious practices, is breathing. And most of us don't appreciate how to do it. So I have one favor to ask of you. I want everyone to stand up for 1 second. And I want you to take the biggest breath you can. Big breath, big breath, big breath. Good. Most of you, relax. Most of you are doing it wrong. Isn't that crazy that you don't know how to breathe? I'm going to show you an animation, and I'm going to explain what we have been taught by our parents, our fathers, but we just forgot. Children do this naturally. We forget to do it as adults. I'm going to show you how to take a correct deep breath, and I'm going to show you anatomically why, and then we're going to do it together one cycle. It's okay? So if you look at your breathing, I'm going to skip that for a second. Look at the diaphragm. Now, when you inhale, your diaphragm has to come down, the orange thing at the bottom. The lungs are the pink. So exhale, belly button in, diaphragm up. Inhale, belly button out, diaphragm down. The lungs don't work by going, they work because you're moving your stomach. That's the billow. That's the big muscle, the diaphragm, that has to come down and up in order to drive motion within the body. Now that you know this, I want everyone to put their right hand on their belly button. We're going to count to 8. The first 4, you're going to inhale by, exaggerate this. Push your belly button out. Don't go, you don't want to, be pulling back. You want to be able to comfortably push your belly button out. Then we're going to relax the belly button and let it go in. We'll do it twice. Ready? Deep breath in. 1. Push your belly button out. 2. Exaggerate it. Feel with your hand. 3, 4. You should feel a little aching in the xiphoid. Now soften your belly. 5. Exhale. 6. Now pull your belly button towards your spine. Pull it in, right? Now in one more time. Deep breath. 2. Belly button. 3. Way out. 4. Aching in the xiphoid, this chest. Relax it. 5. 6. Let the belly button go towards the spine to push the breath out. So beautifully. Have a seat. Thank you. Yeah, give yourself a hand because you deserve it. Now, if you watch a baby sleeping at night, they will naturally, as they inhale, push the belly button out. You watch a professional singer. I was taught this when I'm a heart surgeon. I didn't know anything about television. I only did it because my wife, because she's a producer. And with her and Oprah, I would always get these little tips. And one of them was to use your belly to breathe. Because when you use your belly to breathe, you can talk for longer. Singers are taught this in classes. And interesting way, when you take breaths, you move much more air and you drag gases like nitric oxide from your nose down. So dramatically, your ability to do the things you want helps you. In our religious practices, my father is from Konya in Turkey, which is where Mevlani, the Sufis were. And they would teach them these breathing exercises. And it's true in all mystic religions that the breathing would allow you to center yourself and calm yourself. It is an incredibly powerful tool. So the next time you're angry at work and you want to reach across and strangle somebody, instead you're going to go, that's okay. And with the deep belly breathing, use your meditation, your du'as, prayers, whatever, in order to take yourself to a calmer place. Now, the other thing you can do in the traffic in this area would be helpful is get a cork or something, put it in between this, and you can relax the masseter muscle. This big muscle here, the big thick muscle, it's the only muscle that this articulates a joint. Your jaw goes out of joint every time you open it to chew. You have to force chewing. This muscle with this technique works, and if you're driving along and you put this in your teeth, it will bother you. They'll be scared. Let me leave you with 2 little things. The first thing is when you follow the ideas you've been talking about, when you make your plans, your 2-week plan, you're going to okay. When you're driving, you make a mistake. Does the GPS berate you? Does it yell at you? No. It says at the next available moment, make a U-turn and go back. It's okay. Life is about doing things right over and over again. It's not a wind sprint. It's a marathon. So give yourself the ability to make a U-turn. And secondly, if you're driving along the road, don't drive in the middle. Get in a lane that you like, that you enjoy, that takes you where you want to go, and stay on it. And you'll know the right program if it doesn't bother you, if you forget you're on it. But you got to give yourself 2 weeks. It takes 2 weeks for the brain to make this chemical that's like miracle growth for the brain. It's like fertilizer for the brain, called brain-derived growth factor. It took weeks and adopt another one. You can't just get rid of one. You have to replace it with another one. But if you do that, and you remember to give your heart a reading, you'll always be successful in the long run, because we can do it. Thank you for having me. I have 10 minutes for questions, so go ahead. I don't know where the mics give these mics. Are these the mics for the audience? Oh, there, you have them. Oh, right to your right.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chiara Pagliari from Deals Television Channel. I was one of the Gen 1 speakers in Deauville in 2011. Of course, I'm younger, so I wanted to ask you what we can do in the workplace for people of my age to create a better sleeping culture when it's so high in securing good jobs and keeping performance level high.
So you mentioned the amount of stress, but in fact, it doesn't really matter how much stress you have. It matters how much the stress affects you. We have to transition the way we think about stress from some externally controlled to something that we actually address currently. Because if I'm doing heart surgery, I remember there was a famous heart surgeon named Denton Cooley. He did a heart transplant in the United States, in Texas. And he was rounding, and he's a heart surgeon. He's all these stressful things happening. He was talking to a patient, and he said, "What's the cause that I have too much life? What kind of work do you do?" And he said, "Well, I run an auto shop. I car mechanics." And he said, "Well, my job is much stressful than that. People die." And the man said, "Yes, but you don't work with your father." And I think joking. He wasn't. And how it affects us is very different. And how it affects. So I use meditation in my own life, and I, like you, have to succeed and be different and be spectacular in that earlier image. It's being able to center myself. So I meditate. I do transcendental meditation, whatever kind you want. I use the breathing that I showed earlier, and I use it in my most stress to move past the pain of stress, because a little bit of stress is good for it. It actually allows us to thrive. It makes our productivity higher. Too much stress takes us to a place where we don't thrive and we don't sleep. And I usually do a meditation at night right before I go to bed. So my ritual, do not reinvent the wheel every day. Do the same day if you can. There'll be enough to mess your routine up. But my routine is at nighttime, as I turn the lights down, about a half an hour, I meditate for 20 minutes. I do simple stretches right before that. And then when I'm done, I don't look at the phone one last time. I don't stimulate my brain, because the last thing you look at is what's up all night long. I try to go to bed. And the value of sleep before midnight is much more than after midnight. I'm sleeping from 10 to 6, then 12. Your circadian rhythm wants that. Go to bed earlier than you think. Even if you have to lie in bed a little longer, long term it's much better. This gentleman right here. I like your suit.
Thank you, Os. It is great to be here. I'm inspired, I'm educated, and I'm ready to live to become 120 at least.
Good, at least.
At least. There's the one thing that bothers me with this fantastic presentation that they made. Yes. One thing that we actually killed here, at least 80% while we were here. At least. We not live to 120 because of that. And you didn't really...
It is?
It is the screen time. The recent study from Australia, I think it was, length was about 40 years. It was shown every hour after 1.5 hour use with screen, in front of screen, caused 21 minute loss of life, basically. Yeah. So you don't lose only 1 hour watching TV or screen or social media. You lose actually 1 hour, 21 minutes every single day when you do that. Can you talk more? I know that you are not completely... I'm
biased. Yeah. I'm biased. So, but it's a point that's come up quite a bit. It's not just screen time, it's also social media, where most of the growth in screen time is. So a couple of realities. The data we have is any sedentary activity. And in the workplace, we know that every hour you sit at work on average increases your mortality rate 11%. another way of using the same numbers. And it happens for a couple of reasons. One, of course, your attention is completely focusing on this and you're not taking care of your body. So I tell people at our workplace, we have, instead of chairs, we have balls they sit on. And I bring it up because it at least forces them to have some core strength. Or we even have walking desks now in some of my offices at my studio where people can walk while they're looking at screens because they have to look at screens a lot. The bigger issue, though, is when you're looking at social media in particular, or screen time, you're not focused on other things you could be doing, like the natural physical activity that you would do every day. And that's a place where I think we're going to have to make a significant change. This problem with social media, from my perspective, and it's a powerful tool, you know, I think I have 10 million people who follow me on social media. So I love social media and I use it. But I also appreciate the damages and dangers and gaming that go along with it, because it takes you to a virtual world instead of a real world. Part of screen time mortality is lack of activity. The other is lack of intent. It's very hard for me to, if I'm not looking and listening to you. The most generous thing we do is give our attention to another human being. And we sit down, we've all been there. I was at a bar last night after the Cartier party, and everyone was on their phone, texting. They're in a bar. People up in bars, you know, they're texting people, and we're all living that. In my home, I don't let the kids use their phones when we're having meals. So we all have to create lines of barriers in our life that begin to restrict the invasion of technology, screen time is an example, into our lives to allow us to really live our lives. Otherwise, it won't matter. No one will care because we'll be by ourselves in a little room. Way in the back there, that'll come here, I promise. Go way in the back there. Go ahead. There's the biggest hand I've ever seen like this making.
Hello, doctor. Welcome to Dubai. My name is Alia. I'm from Jordan. And in December, I was in Konya. So I know that your parents are from there. Yeah. So there's two questions, actually, I'd like to ask. I just see the question, of course, you are the authority online. But there's a root to that, which is cosmetology today and the Botox and the filler. So I'd really like to get your view. And I'm sure, you know, like I'm not really the only one here who's concerned about this. Then the second question, we're approaching now June and we're going to celebrate the month of Ramadan. So I'd really like to have your view as well on how to really celebrate this month, because there's as well a lot of concerns, you know, like especially from the media and like really attacking this month, and how can you deprive yourself from food and water. So what would be your take on to live this month?
Thank you for both questions. So cosmetology, and then we'll take a question from here because I promised, and then I'll let you go. So I actually have no problems with Botox or Restylane or the fillers. You have to appreciate the beauty you already have. And if you don't have that, no matter how much Restylane or Botox, you're not going to feel the person that you can be. I fight this with my wife all the time. She's, you know, back in the hotel, she's a producer, so she's making a movie. But every once in a while she'll come and say, I want to get this done or that done. And I say, I married you the way you are for a reason. It wasn't a mistake. I married exactly the person I wanted to marry. And then I began to realize she's not doing it for me. She's doing it for the other women. As long as you're honest with yourself, who you're doing it for, because we don't have the time. I'm angry. But if your lips want to be bigger, it's fine. What I don't like is surgery, unless they're really necessary. If you lose 100 pounds, get the skin taken off. When you do liposuction, and you don't lose, you get under your chin. The fat actually, the new fat cells that have to grow in your belly because you took them out, so they grow in your chin. You get fat in places you don't want. When you have multiple facial plastic surgical procedures, it doesn't look good. You want to look like a healthy 80-year-old, not a 20-year-old trying, you know, an 80-year-old trying to look 20. It doesn't look good. So there's a line that I would draw that would guide some of the thoughts. With regard to Ramadan, this is a spiritual practice that we know can be safe, but in many countries, not Turkey as an example, I know how it's a big celebration when the fast breaks. You have no alcohol, of course, but tons of food, food that's not good for you, and then you get up in the morning, you eat a lot more food, and so by the time you're done, interestingly, people gain weight. Now, how's that possible? You didn't eat all day long, but you ate so much when you were allowed to eat that you gain weight. It should be seen as a detox. It's supposed to be a spiritual detox, right? A submission, a way of honoring what's really important in our lives. And so when we do the break, when we break the fast, and we do these spiritual rituals, they should be healthy as well. It should be the healthiest we eat all year round. It should be the way that we all feel the best we're ever going to feel. And we know that people who actually fast intermittently live longer. So it can be a tool towards that, not a blockage, not a hindrance. One last question here. If whoever's got it. Yes? Just whoever's, yes. That's what we're right there for. It's the last question. Make it a good one.
Hello. Hi, my name is Miriam. I'm a family doctor and I also practice integrative medicine. So thank you for all the knowledge today and for everyone who made this happen. I noticed chronic stress is increasing. It's like more than a pandemic. Everyone is stressed. And as you know, it's a mind, body, spirit, it all works together. Is there any supplement or any kind of food that can aid us release stress? Or I know we meditate, we breathe.
It's the perfect question to end on. Thanks. I'll tell you what the best data on this, and it's not a magical solution, but it's a very effective one, are omega-3 fats. We know that people who are in stressful environments, when they have more omega-3s in their diet, our brain's mostly fat. And so it has to make new connections to deal with stress. So in London, they gave cabbies sardines or bread. And the ones with sardines were able to deal with stressful situations much more effectively. And in most of the world, we have not enough omega-3s and too many of the other bad fats. So fish oils are the major source of omega-3s, but walnuts have them as well. So you can get them from nut sources. And the fish don't make omega-3s, they eat them from the algae. So you can actually take algae-based omega-3s that have no toxins, better taste, and easily available. And that's the most important supplement that I take. And I take about a gram of fish oil equivalent a day. And I think most people, and especially women, should, because we know that it causes postpartum depression when women don't have enough omega-3s, because the baby takes your omega-3s to put it in their brain, and you're left without enough. So there have been trials where they give women omega-3s and deal with postpartum depression. Listen, I have loved being with you all. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day with a fantastic conference. And I want to thank the organizers for doing a wonderful job. Take care.
Thank you, Dr. Oz. It was an amazing session. Like we were watching one of your awesome episodes. Thank you so much. شكرا لحضورنا الكريم. أدعوكم الآن لأخذ الصورة وأدعوكم أيضا لزيارة ركن الديسكفري للاطلاع على باقي المنصات الموجودة التابعة لمنتدى المرأة العالمي في دبي وأيضا ورش العمل مرافقة لهذا